first. Thank you very much for coming along.
Thanks for having us.
And how are we doing the timer? Will we ding it at one?
Time is up.
Can they see?
Yes. Yes, they can see it.
Yeah. Okay.
I will give you a minute warning if you don't notice it on the...
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Cool. All right. Thanks for welcoming us here today. Just here to talk to obviously our written submission from the Spreydon-Cashmere-Heathcote Community Board. So we've got a lot of detail in the document itself, but I just want to hit the highlights and leave time for questions as well at the end. So our top line item in the submission is the South Library. So surprise, surprise. What I just want to talk about again with the South Library is obviously this is a very well loved community centre. It's one of the most well used facilities in the city in terms of community facilities. It's a library. It's a cafe. It's a farmers market site. It's a site where we run community governance from, and it's a home for many of our community groups. And obviously, the time has now arrived to look to rebuilding that facility due to the damage from the earthquakes. And we want to speak to the budget that's currently in the LTP and with respect to what the building actually needs. So currently in the budget, there's $22.5 million approximately allocated, including some earmarked from Better Off funding. And July last year, Council received a report from staff basically saying that the true cost of a rebuild would be closer to $25 million. And at that time, councillors, accepted that was the figure and that there'd have to be money allocated in future annual plan and long-term plan processes. So while we recognise that that's sort of more of an LTP process, we'd like to do two things. Firstly, signal that's something we'll be looking for in the LTP. But secondly, for the actual annual plan itself, we have an ask, which is that we ask that the staff do the scoping and design work to the original figure from July last year, that $25 million figure, so that number, which we trust will be allocated when the time comes in the LTP by Council, as Council said that it would do, that scope and that design has been done to the right number of $25 million. So that's what we're asking. And Kia, did you want to talk to Hunter Terrace as well?
So just to follow on from that, this is a project that has been delayed over a period of time to fit in with the needs of the network of community facilities across the city. And this board has strongly supported that we take a network-wide approach to community facilities, supporting facilities like the Hornby Community Facility and, of course, the Linwood Woolston Pool over that time. So we've taken a network-wide approach, and we feel that this is now the time that this part of the network receives its the aroha it needs. So obviously Hunter Terrace, there's some work ongoing there, and this is just to flag the pump track and basketball court there. There is an existing shortfall in FY24 that of 120,000 that we would also like just to flag for you guys to be part of what should be a really amazing part of the future of that part of the world.
Thanks, Kia. So another big item for us is growing neighbourhoods. So obviously our whole city is experiencing intensification, and some parts of the city are well attended to in terms of their sort of planning and strategic design with the Greater Christchurch Urban Development Strategy. Some of the suburbs closer to the city centre, in particular in our area, Spreydon, are a bit less well accounted for in that planning process, and there's intensification happening in a more haphazard way. What we would like as part of this growing neighbourhoods sort of pattern is to ask for a project manager and a planner to support the board with work to bring together a bit more of a strategic, coherent view of how areas like Spreydon can respond to intensification by improving amenity and general utility and amenity of those suburbs to basically account for the increased number of people. So that's kind of our number two. Did you want to chat to, is it the guidance plan, Kia?
Yeah. So obviously one of our priorities in the board plan is Kyoto Kitai, from the hills to the sea, talking about the Port Hills and then the Apawaho-Heathcote River. There is an existing Lower Apawaho Heathcote River management plan document, which a huge amount of work went into developing that document, and I'd particularly like to mihi to the Apawaho-Heathcote River Network for their role in that document. So one of the things that we're really asking for is that council commits the resourcing over the period of this annual plan and into the future to be able to deliver on some of those aspirations. And I guess just to raise that up as an issue that we start to work on. It's great having these plans, but delivering them is really important too.
Cool. So another huge area of focus for us is safe transport choices. So in particular, looking at the cycleway from Westmoreland to the Norwest Arc cycleway. We just really want to support the existing budget allocation there for that to be completed. That's a really high priority for us. But we also wanting to support those kind of second and third tier connections to those MCRs as well. So those local cycleway connections is a big focus for our board. So we're requesting. So we support the existing budget that's already there in the annual plan and the LTP, and we've got a few projects that are outlined in more detail in our written submission that we're requesting budget be brought forward if other central government funding becomes available.
Cool. And then definitely one of the key projects that we have coming up is the Cashmere Road public transport improvements. This is going to be a vital part of increasing bus reliability on that corridor. So we just really want to flag that as something that we're really keen on. And obviously, we have recently signed off on the Cashmere Dyers roundabout, and just to, I guess, acknowledge that project, and it'll be great to see that delivered in the near future.
Cool. So those are kind of the highlights from our I guess, asks and views from our board for our ward area. We've also got some thoughts on some of the city-wide issues as well. In particular, the UAGC, where this board supports any reduction in ideally removal of the UAGC, as we don't view it as a progressive tax, and we don't think that's fair.
We would just like to acknowledge the proposal to change the allocated limit for water charging. We believe it's important to provide some consistency to consumers, and therefore we would suggest keeping with what is currently the limit, as that helps to incentivise the behaviour change, which is the key part of this policy. We would also, just to note in terms of matters like the Capital Endowment Fund, obviously pulling those levers is a one-off, and there's a real risk that when we use things like the Capital Endowment Fund to top up Strengthening Communities funding, we can only do that to so much, and in the long run there will have to be some tougher choices made. So we do just want to flag that there is no free lunch, unfortunately, there.
Yeah. I guess I just want to sort of talk to Strengthening Communities funding as well. You know, the Strengthening Communities funding is something that is not just a nice to have for us. Strengthening Communities funding is a really, really high impact way of spending money. You know, it's the people that really deliver the goods on the ground in terms of social fabric and social cohesion are our volunteers in our communities. So our board is just strongly in support of any retention of the Strengthening Communities funding, and that's kind of why we're talking about the Capital Endowment Fund. We don't want to see that approach of a kind of one-off top-up potentially undermining that funding in the future. Yeah.
Cool. And then I guess the last thing we just wanted to touch on is obviously the council has a problem delivering the large-scale capital projects that it has set out. The capital programme delivery is something that's been a problem for, I can remember Andrew Turner talking about the difficulty in actually delivering capital for going back 10 years now. We see one of the big challenges is that there are some major infrastructure issues facing Christchurch, and council does need to think carefully as part of the long-term plan about exactly what the scale of the capital programme should be going into the future, and how that capacity and ability to deliver can be ramped up over the next 10 years. Continually getting to this point where we have to keep trimming the capital programme as it undermines community confidence, but also it probably reflects an inability to do the investment in our city that we need.
And that's all that we've had written down, so we're keen for any questions from the council.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Pauline, then Sam.
Thank you. It's a really interesting and well-delivered submission. Just touching on the Capital Endowment Fund, and I appreciate you were calling out the risk there that, you know, it needs to be a one-off. But in the document, there's two options. One of them is to actually reduce the take from the Capital Endowment Fund down to 500,000 instead of the 1 million, and that would have a rates impact of 0.08%. So I'm wondering if you had an opinion on that.
Yeah, well, we would support that.
You'd
Yeah,
support
we
that.
would support reduced take from the capital endowment fund. Absolutely. Yeah.
And an increase in the rate of 0.08.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you, that's clear.
Tim?
Yeah, thank you very much for coming in and doing your presentation. Probably two things. One of them follows on from Pauline's around the Capital Endowment Fund. Is that so? You're happy to, I guess, charge more this year, even though the interest has gone up in that fund, so to speak. So I'm just trying to understand full picture in terms of your view on that fund. We've got a lot more in it because of the higher interest rates.
Sorry, Sam. Could you repeat the question?
So the question is effectively, if we've got more interest in that fund because of inflationary pressures and the higher interest rates at the moment, we've kind of got more to spend. So we're doing it as a one-off given the pressures in their community. I was just trying to understand if you have a view on that balance of it being a one-off for the pressure in the community.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I don't think that spending on our community groups and the people that do the work and the hard mahi on the ground to build communities in Christchurch should be dependent on interest rates. I think that's something that we should be investing in as a council, with valuing that with rates money and valuing that with operational spending that's not dependent on sort of economic wins and things like that.
Okay. And then just the second one is around, and just so I'm clear on the capital program, because I completely get your point, and Andrew and Leanne were really good at talking about the deliverability aspects of it. So are you saying at the moment the capital program is too high? Because what we had a report yesterday where it said that we can hit about 390. So I guess the fear is we go into next year with too much on the program and, like you said, let down the community. So where did you land as a board on that?
So just to comment on that, you as council will be much more across the deliverability of your capital program this year. Our view is that really that's something for the CE to deliver, essentially, is the capital program that you set out. Our comment is more around, and as you go into that long-term plan process, the need to have a pathway to deliver, so that, as you say, if 390 is the figure, then let's think about how do we raise that 390 to 420 to 450 to 500, whatever it is that we need to do to match the infrastructure deficits that we currently have.
Yeah. So just so I'm really clear, sorry, Phil, in this year, given all the advice we've had from the chief executive and the management team, the challenge is getting it over 390. Are you comfortable with having a capital program in excess of that, knowing we can't deliver it?
If you can't deliver it, then I think that's a conversation that you as a council need to have. Certainly what we would be supporting is what's out in the annual plan as
Right.
is.
Okay, thank you. That's thanks.
Cool. Aaron? And then Vic.
Yeah, so just on the South Library, is that being rebuilt to the same size, or is it being built bigger?
Do you want to touch on that, Callum?
Yeah,
I think you've seen the
Currently,
presentations.
2,500 square metres or 247.
We're actually getting a briefing about the specific design coming up in about a week's time, but more the same size. Short answer, yes, same size. Yep.
Right, because
So as you'll know, they're reusing the same
Yeah,
foundations, so
yeah.
it does have to be the same size because the foundations remain the same, yes.
right, yeah, because staff are working to a budget of $22.5 million, which is $9,000 a square metre, and commercial building prices are averaging around 2,500, peaking at around 3,500. So I think the current budget is pretty substantial. Do you not think?
Well, as I say, we're still awaiting the briefing on the detailed design of the project, and a lot of that cost isn't necessarily. There's a huge amount of cost going to be in terms of demolition and all those other kind of extra site costs that might not necessarily apply in every situation with a commercial build. So, yeah, I'm not fully across the detail there. That's my speculation at the moment, but yeah, we're going to hear from staff soon.
Yeah, because the current rate we're applying to it is the same rate as building hospital space, which has a lot more in it than a library. That's all.
Sorry, Vic. Yep, sorry.
Thank you for the submission. It's incredibly well presented, well written. I think you've set the bar for how submissions should be presented. I think it's great. I note that you recognise at the beginning of your submission you take into account the fiscal environment and the challenges of the operation environment that we're working in. We've got some serious deliverability issues. You're looking for additional budget and you're asking for some projects to be brought forward. I wonder whether there is anything in your area that you are prepared to substitute, because I think it's incumbent on all of us to be looking at what we are doing, acknowledging that we don't have a bottomless purse. So is there anything that you could substitute and push out?
Yeah, look, I think that what this board would say is that we have substituted that in the past. you know, we don't when we take a network-wide view of things like community services, for example, the South Library, what we did, you know, in the past was basically say, well, look, as the South Library, although it's not an ideal facility in its current state, is at least open, and so we're going to prioritise community facilities in other areas. And our board, for example, supported the Linwood Pool and the Hornby Community Centre. And actually what that means is it leaves a bit less on our plate for us to offer up, you know, to the swap. And so we actually think that it's fair and it's right that that the council, having postponed South Library, now turns its attention to doing that job, doing it once, doing it right.
Thank you. Thank you very, very, very good presentation. Thank you very much for coming in. Thanks.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Doke. Horswell Hornby Rickerton.